Well, as the Finance Minister dishes out funds to various departments and government agencies this afternoon, how the money is spent is crucial to sustainability. I want to bring in the former Chief Procurement Officer at the Treasury, Kenneth Brown. He's now an executive at Trade Capital Investment, spending 19 years at Treasury, in fact, and more than 3 decades as a public servant. Kenneth, thanks indeed for coming in.
It's a pleasure, Devan.
All right, so it's allocations. We go through this every year. We see these jaw-dropping amounts from the consumers and the public out there, 1.8 trillion or thereabout, the overall budget. And then the question often comes out, you know, what are we seeing in terms of bang for your buck on the ground? Now, Kenneth, you've been there. Any difference since you left Treasury from 2016 compared to now as you see it from the outside? Are the challenges even greater?
Look, no, thanks, Devan, and thanks for eNCA for having me. Look, in terms of the Treasury and how the Treasury function and the Treasury team, I mean, we always had excellence in the Treasury. So when it comes to budget preparation, the Treasury has been on top of its game. And today will be no different. So we're going to see, I'm quite confident that we'll see a solid budget. The budget will go into the right areas, target the right areas. I mean, I probably think 75% of its spending will go actually into the social wage and making sure the health and all of that has got sufficient funding to execute the budget. So on the budget preparation side, that's not where the problem lies. Yeah. I think it's more on the budget execution side where we need to think and apply our minds on. Now, I'm thinking just quickly of the top of my head, is the budget. There are 2 pieces of legislation that the Minister will table today. The one would be the Division of Revenue Bill and the Appropriation Bill. Parliament will be deliberating these, and by the end of March, these would be approved. That's where the problem now starts. Once these have been approved, each department would have had their votes approved, etc. Now they must go and deliver. Does the legislatures, does Parliament oversee that spending properly? Yeah. Do they hold the relevant ministers properly accountable for that is a key question. Then the interface between a minister and the DG in the department, there's another problem. And coming back to the issues around inefficiency and bang for buck, I think the area that government must continue to focus on would be procurement. Yeah. If you don't fix procurement, you're going to have slow delivery and you're going to have the frustrations that we have on the ground.
And I want to get into that because it's the value chain you speak of. When people are watching this budget, they've just returned home hitting 2 or 3 potholes, not exaggerating to some degree, but this is a reality. They would see dysfunctional water supplies and so forth, and then they look at these staggering figures. I mean, we're on a recovery path at the moment. That's what the President has in terms of the plan and getting the economy up. Infrastructure spend's a huge one. And on that issue of procurement, I mean, you cited an example in one of your interviews about how through interviews you've revealed that an 85-kilometer pipeline some time back should have cost 500 million. It ended up costing 2 billion rand. And that, I mean, that's just an example, but one tends to get worried when you think that we've got this infrastructure plan, there's no oversight on this thing. Is it worrying that this thing can continue in the midst of actually getting our recovery done?
No, Devan, I'll get to the pipe problem now. The issue is, people must also understand in government, you've got an intergovernmental system. Yeah. There's a certain sphere that's responsible for certain responsibilities. So if you were to look at potholes, you look at water systems at the reticulation level, that's the municipal function. So municipality, they table their budgets and IDPs, and that's where the cracks will fall apart. At the provincial level, an MEC for health and education is responsible for the health system and education. At the national level, you've got those ministers that are actually just policy makers at the end of the day. Now, the procurement of it happens quite in a large scale for health and education at the provincial level. The rest of the other, whether it's water, electricity reticulation, all of that happens actually at the local kind of level. What happens at the national level, if you take the Department of Water Affairs, yes, they would be responsible for your large resources like your dams, your bulk infrastructure, for example, there. So coming to the example that you've given, it has got to do with procurement planning and execution. So if you before you go out on a tender, you're going to say this pipeline is 100 kilometers. You would have done your technical work around it. You would have had the specifications around it. You would even know how much it would cost at the end of the day, right? So when you go out and tender, you already know what's going to happen actually around it there. Now, when the tender gets awarded, that's where the problems now come. Do you give it to the person who's got the right capabilities to do it? The person may even have a CIDB grading 9 to be able to do it. But does he have the capability to do it? How do you monitor that on a regular basis, right? But also thirdly, you've got very good companies that actually get these tenders and execute them. But then you get a bureaucracy. These guys don't get paid on time. If you take the 30-day problem. Yeah. So you find that this guy has pumped in a lot of money at risk in a pipeline, and he doesn't get paid on time. He can't continue. By the time you wake up, the guy is bankrupt. You need to replace him. And so you go.
I want to come in there. I mean, I'll tell you why that poses some sort of a problem like on a day like today. You have the labor unions saying, hey, guys, listen, you better make sure we get a decent wage, so you've got to up our wage increases. They send that to the finance minister, arguing that maybe leakages should be taken care of and they shouldn't bear the brunt of, all the costs. So therein you have what happens on that side affecting allocations.
No, look. If you look at it on the personnel side, yep. Government has fairly succeeded with the unions to keep it quite kind of constant. For me, the issue is, do we get value for the money that we pay the workers for? Yep. For me, that is the key thing. Are the teachers in classrooms and teaching? Do you have your health workers in the hospitals, in the clinics, properly supported to be able to execute their responsibilities? At an administrative level, if you go into a water board, you go into a department that manages infrastructure, do you have the right skills to make sure that the infrastructure rollout actually does happen? These are the conversations that government actually needs to start to have and think about and say, how do you talk to the unions also smartly and say, come to the party, but also help us to make sure that on the ground, your people also contribute on the delivery of the mandate there.
Is the state of disaster that's been declared an opportunity for those who may want to slip in a buck in their pocket? Because that's the concern from some of the big businesses and normal citizens out there. What do you make of it being in procurement for such a long time? Does it open doors for fraud?
Look, the way things have been managed, look, people will always, given your experience with COVID-19 and what has happened and the urgency in which things have actually happened and the SIU work that has highlighted quite a lot of problems that actually people are genuinely concerned. But should they worry about it now? What is important actually is to say, what will this state of disaster actually be all about? Yep. Is it going to be an issue around saying areas where there's hospitals, where there's clinics, where there's schools, these areas shouldn't be load-shedded? How do you manage quite a bit of that? Is it a matter of saying, look, we're giving a bit of flexibility to Eskom to be able to roll out its maintenance kind of program? Fine. But how do you do it transparently so that people know? If you're going to spend, say, 50 billion over the next year under this to fix things, we want to know who gets those contracts. Mm-hmm. Are those contracts aligned to markets? And the pricing actually around it there. Yeah. So those are the things that people, but you need transparency, basically, on that. I am not too concerned, frankly, on it, because it needs to be treated as an emergency. There are regulations in procurement that allows for emergency procurement. The issue is, do we stick to them and are we transparent around it? Yep. That's the problem.
Well, thanks very much indeed, Kenneth Brown. He's the former Chief Procurement Officer at the Treasury, now an executive at Trade Capital Investments. Well, that's